making some ghugni today. So ghugni is something that's quite like close to home for me. I grew up having it often for breakfast with some bread, also in Chaat, but it also is prevalent in Jharkhand, Bihar, certain parts of northeast India as well, like Assam and also Orissa. Ghugni can be made in a lot of different ways. So this is just one of the ways, and I'm going to be having it with some parotas today, but it's actually really fun to make as well. So it's usually made with Bengal gram, which is yellow peas or white peas. People actually quite often mistake it with chickpeas, but it's not actually the same. Chickpeas are much softer. This has much more of a bite. So if you can't find this, which I completely understand because actually often I get mine from Kolkata, you should try it with maybe mung beans or even kala channa, so black chickpeas, instead of the tinned chickpeas, because it needs a bit more of a bite, like I said. To start with, you have to soak these things, okay? So motor dal, which is the Bengal gram, you have to soak it for at least, I would say, like 8 to 10 hours. I often do it overnight because that's the easiest thing. And then you have to boil them. So you can do it in a pressure cooker. I just boil it with quite a bit of salt, a little bit of sugar as well. And it takes about 35 minutes-ish to boil. And you can see them, they're kind of simmering away. I'll show you what they look like as well. They're quite interesting. So this is what they look like. And once it's done, we're not looking for a mushy texture. They should still hold its shape, but you should be able to squish it with your fingers. So this has another like 20 minutes or so to go. And while that's cooking, we can get started on the sauce, I guess, the rest of the element which this is going to go into. So yeah, we'll get going straight away. So while the peas are boiling, I'm going to get a frying pan pretty much, and then add a couple of teaspoons of ghee into it, and I mix my ghee with some mustard oil. So if you don't have mustard oil or ghee, you can do this with butter. I think that would probably be like the closest thing. You can add a little splash of olive oil into it as well, because actually I've realized there are some similar flavor profiles with mustard oil and a good olive oil. So I'm just going to let that kind of get up to heat. Especially with mustard oil, you need to make sure it's really hot before you add any sort of spices, otherwise it kind of just doesn't work and the smell of the mustard doesn't come out. And then into that I'm going to add just roughly chopped green chili. I'm going to add 2 green chilies, and then I'm going to add some more green chili to garnish, because this version of ghugni is kind of a mixture between a ghugni chaat and a ghugni tarkari, which is quite fun. It's nice to have for dinner with a little bit of bread. So I've got 2 garlic cloves going in there as well. With the garlic, I like to add a bit of a variation. I like to have some chunky garlic, and I'm going to grate in some garlic in a little bit. And then I've got some shallot. So I'm using 3 shallots for my 150 grams of the ghugni today, the Bengal gram. And similar with the shallot, I'm going to slice some, and then we're going to use some to garnish on top, which is finely chopped. So that's the kind of chaat element. You want some fresh onion over the top. So I'm just chopping as we speak. And the 2 moshlas that you need for this are bhaja moshla, which is very, very quintessentially Bengali. It is toasted cumin and chili, and I make mine with 2 parts cumin to 1 part chili. And you get it quite dark and toasted, no oil, and then you can store it. And then Bengali garam moshla, which is cinnamon, clove and cardamom only. I actually take mine from my mom, who does it in equal parts, but obviously you can make it yourself as well. And then the other little bit of, kind of not spice, but the flavor profile we're looking for is ginger. So this is ginger paste. So I'm just going to fry the shallots and other bits in the pan for a little bit. I'm going to add some more shallot because I love that. So once the shallots have softened a little bit, I'm going to add a bay leaf, and I'm going to add my garam masala. So I've got half a teaspoon of garam masala. And then, actually pretty soon after that, I am going to add some cubed potatoes. This is something we do in our house. You obviously don't have to make ghugni with potatoes. You can do it with just the peas. But this adds a little bit of a bulk to the dish, which is quite nice. And along with that, if it's looking a little bit too dry, because potato is going to soak up a bit of that oil, just add a little touch of the mustard oil. And let it kind of get brown. We're trying to fry the potatoes, and it's cut really small so it cooks fast. We don't want to be waiting for these potatoes to cook down, basically. So I'm going to season with salt when things are getting a little bit softer. So I've got half a tablespoon in this. I've got some salt in the boiling water of the peas as well. So I think with salt, it's quite, everyone says like a teaspoon or as you prefer, but you do need to salt your food throughout, and I have definitely said this before. So try not to add all the salt at the end or at the beginning, try and do it throughout. So with this, the potatoes are going to soak in a lot of that, which will be nice. So when you're biting into a potato, it's not going to be bland. And then you should technically add some tomato to this, but I don't have any tomato, so in goes my ketchup. It's a great substitute, and adding ketchup means I also don't need to add a little pinch of sugar, which would be necessary in this. And then we're just going to let it soften and fry. Ghugni is also quite popular with mangsho, with meat. I've only had it a couple of times, but yeah, it's actually really, really nice if you cook chunks of meat with ghugni. It's got a very like Moorish, earthy taste, and it's very popular in Bengal, especially Kolkata. So that's definitely something you should try. The recipe is very similar. You just have chunks of meat through it, a bit more garam masala, a bit more chili. It's yeah, very yummy. So while that's cooking away, and this is going to take about 5 to 10 minutes, I'm going to grate in some ginger. And I'm going to add my ginger paste in a little bit, not yet, because the trick to adding it a bit later is you get that flavour first when you're eating it. And Bengalis love ginger. So it's in a lot of our food and it's the main taste. And then I'm going to grate in some garlic as well. Not too much at this stage because you don't want too much of a raw garlic taste. And I don't think this is very traditional, but I mean, I love garlic, so it's nice to add some a little bit later. I'm going to add 2 little cloves. In a separate bowl, I've actually got some of the stock water from the peas because there's a little bit starchy and it's got the kind of saltiness to it as well. So I'm going to add half a teaspoon of turmeric powder, my ginger paste, and half of my bhaja masala. So I've got 1 teaspoon in here. I'm going to add half of that, and then I'm going to use the rest for garnish. And then chaat masala, 1 teaspoon as well. And then we're just going to mix that together. And at this point, if you want this quite spicy, you can add some chili powder into this as well. I definitely prefer fresh green chili, so I try not to use much chili powder. And then we're going to add that into this. So the layering of the ginger and the turmeric and the bhaja masala, it means that you're going to be able to taste that predominantly, and then you'll get the other flavors. So the potatoes are kind of cooked because they're cut so small. Obviously it's going to still continue cooking, and my peas are still boiling for another little, few minutes, and then we're going to kind of mix it all together. So you can see the oil separated, which is basically the best part of cooking, I think, when you get to see like the little reactions in the pan. So I've taken off the Bengal gram, the ghugni from the heat now, and you kind of want it to be at the stage where it's not falling apart. Obviously it's whole, but you can just squish it and it breaks apart. And I'm going to leave some of the water in there because I want it to cook for a little bit longer. And we're going to add that into this. And I'm going to add a handful of coriander root as well, because lots of flavour in the coriander root. And everyone knows I love tangy food, so this is some tamarind pulp. Extremely not traditional, but I think it's very yummy, so I'm going to add some in there. And then this needs to cook with a lid on for another 15 to 20 minutes-ish. And the potato is going to get quite soft by then. And this is quite a nice trick, actually, from my mum, to break apart some of these potato bits. And actually what that does is makes the water quite nice and thick. And so when you have it in a gravy, it's not watery, but it'll be quite starchy. And it's really nice to scoop up. And I'm just going to taste it for a bit of salt and see if it needs any more. So for me, that needs a little bit more salt, actually. So I'm just going to grind some into that. We are going to finish this off with beet noon, or black salt, which is very, very typical of any chaat or any sort of kind of street food dish. Obviously, this is kind of a mishmash because I'm having it for dinner. But it is really nice to finish it off with that. And if you don't have that, some flaky rock salt's really nice as well. Okay, so the ghugni is basically ready, and at this point I'm going to switch the heat off and we're just going to garnish. Pretty nicely with a lot of chopped coriander, and go heavy on this actually because it is really nice to get all the fresh chunks. Then we've got shallot as well, just finely chopped. Then we've got some more ginger and some more green chili. Told you that Bengalis love their ginger, so just chopped. And try and keep it quite small because then you don't have big chunks in your mouth. I'm gonna finish adding the rest of the shallot actually. And then the rest of this bhaja masala that we had left, so I've got half a teaspoon here, and this kind of gives it the fragrance on top. And then we're gonna finish off with a nice, a nice squeeze of nimbu, so lime, on top, and it's got a really nice rich color. Actually, I'm going to do the whole lime. Nimbus are pretty small. There we go. And lastly, the beet noon, which is kala namak or black salt, and it's got this wonderfully Chaat street side flavor and smell. And we're done. The heat is off. It's just simmering away from the heat that was inside when the lid was closed. But yeah, we're ready. And this is my Ghugni. I'm going to have this with some parathas, and it's actually really good with bread as well, all by itself. So you don't even need anything with it. It's just so tasty. I'm going to have a little bite. And I definitely like my Ghugni, like the Bengal gram part of it, to have a bit of a bite. Some people do pressure cook it, and that's fine. It is a lot quicker. Obviously, I've had to wait about nearly an hour for this. But I quite like the slight chunkiness and the bite. I'm just going to try a little bit and not burn my mouth. It's so good. It's like really chatpata and like lip smacking, if that's that word. So yeah, we're just going to have it in a bowl, and that's it. So if you guys do give this a try, please try it with mung beans or something slightly crunchy. So kala channa is perfect actually, but not chickpeas if you can avoid it. However, if you do want to make it with chickpeas, I'm sure it'll be really tasty. So yeah, and give the video a like and some comments, and share it with your friends. And I hope you guys like the kind of more regional stuff that I'm sharing as well.